or any queries from last session?
Ravi, cops, we are, we installed cops on AWS, right? So, also, I mean, you said, there are multiple ways we can work and then, install Kubernetes. So, EKS already is available on AWS, but still, why do, why are we setting up and then why are we following so many procedures? Why not, we can directly use the EKS, right?
I mean, see, it also comes down to whether you want to have the control over the cluster or not, or to be very precise, do you want to manage the cluster or let AWS manage it for you?
Okay.
Also, the cost comes in the picture over here. See, if you're going with the managed, meaning EKS, the cost will be different. It is little on the higher side.
Okay.
And if you're going with this cops, the one that we did in last session, you're
Uh-huh.
only going to pay for the server. Only the
Okay.
server cost would be there. But the downside would be that you will be responsible for everything.
Okay.
Meaning, at any point, let's say, want to upgrade the cluster or add the new nodes and everything, you will have to manage all those things. Now, if you're okay to spend some money, then yeah, you can definitely go with EKS. But yeah, I mean, it all comes down to the pricing, whether you're okay with the cost or not, whether you're ready to pay the money or not. It all comes down to that.
Okay.
So if you have like very tight budget, then a cops is useful. And if you have the budget for the cluster, then you can go with the EKS thing.
Okay. So in companies and all, they set a budget or they'll be okay with these things and all. Will there be any constraints?
See, generally, see, whatever you're doing on AWS, everything comes down to the cost.
Correct.
Okay, what is the cost, how much you'll be paying, and whether the management is okay with that cost or not.
Okay.
Okay, so it all comes down to that. Now, in most of the cases, people are okay. Also, what happens is, see, based on your usage, AWS also gives you a discount. So if you are able to negotiate that with AWS, like, hey, I'll be doing this, I want a discount and everything, and if you're able to negotiate that, then good.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, Rabi.
Okay, cool. So we'll continue from where we left off. So last session, we looked at your cluster setup. We also discussed about your pods, understanding what pods are, what services are, what deployments are. We also looked at some of the commands. So kubectl is what we use to interact with the cluster. We created your pods. We looked at the pods. So everything, at the basic level, we looked at that. So what I've done was, in the last session, the cluster that I created, I've deleted it. uh, Give me one moment. Yeah, so deleted the clusters. I've set up the cluster. I'm setting up the cluster once again, so this will take some time. But yeah, I mean, once the cluster is ready, what we will do is we will again create some pods, and then next thing we will look at is your services. So last session I explained you pods are nothing but your containers. Okay, so in Docker we have the containers. The same way in Kubernetes we have your pods. Okay, so what are pods? Pods are simply your containers. Okay, the containers that we create, we call them as your pods. Now these pods, these are simply your containers. The containers will be running, but at any point if you want to access that container, the application running inside that container, we will need to expose that container, and that is where we make use of your services. So what service does is, service helps us to expose the container so that we can access it, right? Whenever, like, over the internet, if you want to access it, you can make use of your services for that. Okay, so let me open this. So your service, it is basically a round robin load balancer for all the pods. So as a user, whenever we want to access the application running inside the pod, we have a service. Okay, as a user, we hit the service. The service will take care of accessing the pod and accessing the application. Right. So it constantly monitors the pods. In case a pod goes unhealthy, the service will start deploying the traffic to other healthy pods. So in a way, it also works as a load balancer. So what it will do is whenever as a user, when we are trying to access the application, it will send the traffic only to the healthy pods. Now, when we talk about the services, we have four types. We have the cluster IP. So whenever we create your pods, okay, there is an internal network that gets created, same as your Docker networks, right? Kubernetes also has its own network. So if you want to use the internal network internal IP address to access the node, you can make use of your cluster IP for that. So exposes the service on the cluster internal IP address. Then you have the node port. Now, node port will be used when you want to use the node machines. The IP address of the node machines to access the container, you can go with the node port. So exposes the service on each node's IP address at a static port number. Then you have the load balancer. So if you want to like use the application load balancer, all the network load balancer in AWS, you can go with the load balancer option. So exposes the service externally using a cloud provider's load balancer. So since we are uh, working with AWS, you can make use of the application load balancer or the network load balancer. And then you have the external name, so maps the service to the contents of the external name. So there are different options that are available. In our case, we will look at your node port, so using the node machines IP address to access the container. Now you can either make use of the YAML files, or you can directly create the service from the command line itself. So you have both the options, but mostly you will be making use of the YAML files to create your resources. Okay, so like how we created your pod in the last session, you can also create it from the command line, but I would suggest you to stick to the YAML files. Okay, now we want to create a service. All right, so before that, let's create a pod. So let's see if I think, okay, let's go to let's go create your pods. Let's see ingress. Okay, let's look at this. So here is a simple tomcat. Okay, so we're using the tomcat image. So let me take this, and we are creating a pod. Okay, you can see the kind, it says pod. Let's go here. Let me delete this. We'll create pod.yaml, and this will be the instructions, right? So here, very important thing to note is the name that we are giving to the container. Okay, so we are calling it as your lb-pod-example container, and then for the ports, we are giving it a name called Tomcat port. Now we will be using this when we create the service. Okay, just give me one moment. I'm changing my place. Yeah. So let's execute this. So kubectl create and then pod.yaml. So this should create the pod for us. Okay, so we can use this kubectl get pods, and this is still in the container creating status. But yeah, eventually this will transition to one of one ready. Now for this, now let's say I want to access this container, the application, whatever we are running here, we want to access that. Now that's where we will be creating a service. Okay. So we will use this one. And here again, if you see, the kind is we are creating a service, right? And the type, this is where you specify what type of service you want to create. So we have the cluster IP, node port, load balancer, and then the external name. So this is where you specify that. So let me take that, and we will create a service.yaml file. And let's change this to node port. So what I'm telling here is I want this on port 8080, right? And this name, okay, so you can see this target port, we are telling it as Tomcat port, right? So let me show you both the files. So here is my pod that I'm creating, all right? The name, we are mapping this particular service to that particular name. So that way, your Kubernetes will understand that it has to create this service for this particular pod only. Okay. Then we'll say kubectl create -f service.yaml, and this should create one service for us. And then we can use this kubectl get services, and here you can see the service has been created. And this will automatically take care of the port mapping. Okay, so you can see here it automatically gives us a port number. Now all we have to do is in our firewall, we have to allow that port number, and we can access the container over that port number. So that is where your service comes into the picture. So whenever you want to make your container accessible, the application that you are running, if you want to access that application, we make use of your service for that. Does that make sense?
Yes, Ravi.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, node port, we'll go to the security, and we'll edit this, and we'll add this port number 31505. So let's add, we'll add this anywhere. And now I can take the server IP, and we'll access that on port 31505. Yes, what happened? Oh, sorry. 31505. Yeah, 31505. It's taking some time. So this is running on this one 170 to 20 59 35. That is correct. Container was created using the Tomcat image. I'm not sure why it's taking so much of time. Um, yeah, it's not loading. Um, 505 from anywhere. Mm, let me do one thing. Okay, so this is working. Meaning, so basically the application is there. So from the container inside the container, I'm doing a local host. I'm getting a response. That means the container is fine. The application is fine. There seems to be some problem with the service that we have created with this service. So let's see here. Skype service. Um, see. Okay, I'll tell you the problem. So if you look at this pod, okay, here if you see this one, the label, I've given it as lb-pod-example. But in the service that I'm creating, if you look at the label, I'm telling first-pod-example. So basically, my service is not able to hit the right pod. That is basically what is happening here, because the label that I have defined in the pod and the label that I'm using in the service is not matching. So let me delete this. And let me, this will be lb-pod-example. lb-pod-example. Now lb-pod-example, lb-pod-example. And now let's try creating this. Okay, and let's look at service. It's the new port number. So let me edit this. We'll give the port number from from anywhere. Now let's try accessing this on the new port number, and you see I'm able to access. Okay, so this is where your service is you know used. So service is used whenever you want to access the application, the container that you are running. If you want to access that, we make use of your service. Questions?
Ravi. No, sir.
Okay. So to know the port on which the service has been exposed, you can use this to get the service. The next thing we are going to look at is your ingress. Okay. Now ingress. I need one moment. Give me a call. I'm getting a call. Give me 1 minute. Sorry guys. Yeah, so the next thing we have is your ingress. Now ingress can be used when let's say you have two containers, and let's say on one container you're running app 1, on the second container you're running app 2, and then you have one URL. Okay, so using the same URL, you want to access the app 1 and then app 2. So if you say, like, let's say example.com/image, it should go to one container, and then the same URL example.com/video, it should go to another URL. If you want to take care of that routing, so based on the suffix that you are going to give in the URL, based on that, if you want the containers to route the traffic, you can make use of your ingress for that. Okay, so Kubernetes ingress is a collection of routing rules. So it is, essentially a routing rule that we can define, that govern how external users access the services running in a Kubernetes cluster. So here the advantage is that you can run multiple applications, and then using one single service, which is your ingress service, based on the prefix, the suffix that you will give, the routing will the Kubernetes will take care of the routing for you. So something like this. So let's say you have multiple pods running, then you have a service for it. Then as a user, we will hit the ingress service. The ingress will look at the suffix that we are giving, and then based on the suffix, it will route the traffic to the respective pods. Okay, so we will be using the Nginx ingress controller for this example, and you'll have to essentially install the ingress controller first. So again, the GitHub repo that I have shared, you should have examples available over there for this ingress controller. So in our case, this is what we are going to use here. So you have to first execute this deploy.yaml file. This will install the prerequisites for us, which is the ingress controller. Okay, so let me take this, and let me create one file called deploy.yaml. So what this will do is, this will create the prerequisites. Prerequisites in this case would be your ingress controllers. Then we are going to create our pods. So we are going to have two pods over here. Pod 1, so we are creating a pod, and then we are also creating a service for that. Okay, so two containers basically. So we will create pod 1.yaml, and then we will create this. So kubectl create -f pod1.yaml, and then we will create one more pod. So a pod and the service. Okay, so both we are creating over here. This will be pod2.yaml, and we will execute this. I've created two pods, and I've created the service for that. So here, if you see, kubectl get pods, right? So we have the pods over here, right? And for this, we have the service. So kubectl get services. So over here, this is one service, and this is another service. Now for this, if you see, I have not specified the type as to whether it is a node port or a load balancer or anything. We have not specified that. Why? Because we will be creating a separate ingress service for that. Okay, so my pod, so one of the pod is ready. The second one, it is giving me an error image pull. So let me see this. It is looking for this. Let me see. New contact image. Okay, so this image is not there. So again, for this, it is making use of your Docker Hub to pull the image. So your Kubernetes also by default uses Docker Hub to get the images. So basically, this is complaining me that this image, HTTP image, is not available. So let me look in my Docker Hub. And maybe I don't have it. So you know what? I can use this one, this image, new underscore nginx underscore image. Okay, so I'll try using that one. kubectl delete -f. So we'll use this, but we'll just change the image. This will be new nginx image. Okay, that will be the image. So let me create that. Okay, so you can see now I have both the containers. Now for this, we are going to create an ingress service. So this will be the ingress service. Okay, so we are creating ingress, and here if you see, this is where we are taking care of the routing. So if my prefix is Apple, I'm telling it to send the traffic to the Apple service. And if my prefix is banana, I'm telling it to send it to this service, which is basically uh, this service that we have created over here. Okay, so let me take this and let's create ingress.yaml. This will be my instructions, and let's create that. So kubectl create ingress.yaml, and this will create one ingress for me. So we can use this kubectl get ingress, and here you can see the ingress has been created. Now what I can do is, so you can see here, it is creating a load balancer for me. In the backend, it is creating a load balancer. So I can take this, and if I try hitting this, by default, okay, it is giving me a not found. So if you look at the YAML file that we created, so we don't have a default path. Okay, so this is a default path. It does not have any prefix, right? So we don't have anything for that. But if I say slash Apple, traffic should go to my Tomcat. So Apple service, if you look at this, so where's my Apple service? Yeah, here's my Apple service, which is pointing to the Tomcat application. So here is the Tomcat application, and using the same URL. Okay, if I change the prefix, let's say banana, it will go to the other image. So this routing is basically what we do with your ingress controller. So using the same URL, but based on the prefix that we will give, the traffic will be routed to the respective pods. That's your ingress controllers. Questions?
No, Ravi.
No, sir.
Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is your Kubernetes dashboard. Now, Kubernetes also provides us with a dashboard option. You have, we get a UI with this. We have that option as well. Okay. So dashboard is a web-based Kubernetes user interface, And we can use this dashboard to deploy the containerized applications to a Kubernetes cluster, troubleshoot your containerized application, and then manage the cluster resources. So whatever we have been doing until now using the command line, using the CLI, everything can be done by using the dashboard as well, the UI as well. Okay. So how do we install this? Again, the instructions are available in the repo that I have shared. So here, this Kubernetes dashboard setup, here you have the instructions. So first we will run this, which is the prerequisites. So this will get us the prerequisites. Okay. Then we are going to see what all it has created for us. So it is creating two containers. It has two services, couple of deployments, couple of replica sets. So all these resources are getting created over here. Okay. Then we will have to edit the service file, because it is pointing to cluster IP. So here, if you look at this line, it is pointing to cluster IP. And in our case, we're not using the cluster IP, we are using the node port. So we'll have to use that. We'll save and exit this file. Now, whenever we update the YAML files or any YAML files, we will need to delete and restart the pods, the containers. Okay. So for that, we will, so in our case, we are going to delete this one. Sorry, this one. Okay, the dashboard. So we will say kubectl delete pod, and this will be the pod, and then my namespace. So what this will do is this will delete it, and because we have a deployment, it will automatically start a new pod for me. So here you can see 3 seconds, it has automatically started. So what this will do is this will, whatever the new changes we have done, it will reflect that. Then you can get all the services. So let me show this once again. So here you can see I have the services. Now we are going to create one user. Okay. Now, to access this dashboard, we will need to have a user, admin user. So we are going to create one user. So for that user, you should have this YAML file. So we're creating a service account, and we are doing a role binding. So we're giving it an admin permission basically. So let me have this, and let me create this. And that should create the user with the necessary permissions. Once you have that, uh, the last thing we have to do is get a token. Okay, so using this token, so token, you can think of it as a password. So it's kind of a password that we are generating over here. So using that password, we will be logging in to the Kubernetes dashboard. Okay, so we will run this particular command for that, which will generate a token for me. So this will be the token. All we have to do is navigate your browser, and we have to access this. So your server IP, your port number. Now if you're not sure on the port number, here, if you see this one, this is the port number 31294. So we'll have to allow that in our firewall. And then we just have to hit the server. So try to access this in a Firefox, because see, ideally this should be a HTTP request, but for that we need to have certificates, and in our case we don't have certificates. And if you try to access this in the Chrome or anything, it will reject it. So to overcome that, we have your Firefox, which allows us to access that container. Okay, so we'll specify the port number, and then we also need to give few more things, which will be this one, hash login. Uh, so this will be HTTP. Yes. Okay, so you get this basically. So that's okay. We will accept the risk and continue. right? This you don't get this option in Chrome or other browsers, so that's why we're using this one. And then the token that we have generated here, we just provide that token. So in my case, this will be the token, and then sign in. So this should sign into the dashboard. Okay. Okay. So here we have the dashboard. Now everything we have done on the command line will be available in this dashboard. So let's say, for example, kubectl get pods. I have 1, 2, 3. There's my 1, 2, 3. If I go to deployments, I don't have any deployments. If I go to ingress services, these are all the services we have. So load balancer, banana, apple. So everything that we have created is available in this dashboard. Now, however, if you observe here, it does not show me anything related to the Kubernetes dashboard. Now, we have something known as namespaces. Okay, so we can make use of that namespaces to look at the resources. So if I go to the deployments now, I can see the dashboard related resources. Likewise, if I go to the ingress nginx, there's my ingress controller, right? Now, whatever we do in the command line, we can do it in the dashboard as well. But again, you'll have to write the code. You can either upload the file, or you can just give the instructions, or you can have the YAML file over here, and that will go ahead and create the resources for us. So let's say, for example, I want to create a secret, just for the sake of example. Okay, so I'll give this YAML file and click on upload, and this will try to execute it. Now this is created in the default namespace. So I'll go to the default namespace, and if I go to secrets over here, 1 minute. I could not find. That's fine. We are creating a pod. Sorry, we are creating a pod. Yeah. So you see this one? It is creating it. So you can create resources from here also. So you have the dashboard option available. So whatever we do on the command line, uh, everything can be done on the UI as well. So dashboard, it's just the UI version of what we are doing on the command line. So whatever we do on the command line, everything can be done on the dashboard as well. So nodes. So we have two nodes, two machines. One is the controller, and the other is the node machine. Okay. You can look at the roles. You can look at the service account. So we created one service account. You can look at your services, what all services you have, right? So you can also create the services from here. So pretty much everything that you have done on the command line, you can do it on the UI as well. So this is your dashboard. Questions?
No, Ravi.
Okay. I think I'll stop here. I have one last topic, which is your volumes, which is making your data persistent. I'll show this tomorrow, and that should complete your Kubernetes. Okay, and then we will start off with your Ansible configuration management tool. So we'll start off with that. That's all for today. If there's no more questions, then thank you so much, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks, Ravi.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.